The guards still held her arms, but they were careful. Too careful. Every step she took echoed across the metal floor, slow and steady, like she was entering a meeting instead of a public execution. The air inside the chamber felt heavy. Hundreds of alien citizens filled the viewing tiers above, their voices a low, uneasy murmur. They expected a monster. What they saw was a young human woman with dirt on her face, torn sleeves, and eyes that refused to lower. Commander Real stood at the center platform, tall and rigid in polished armor. His gaze followed Lena as she was brought forward. He had seen many prisoners. They cried. They bargained. They collapsed before reaching the mark. Lena stopped exactly where the painted circle met the metal floor. She didn't need to be told. The guards stepped back quickly. One of them rubbed his wrist as if her presence alone made him nervous. Rao spoke, his voice amplified across the hall. "Prisoner," he said, "you stand accused of violent interference, destruction of imperial property, and unlawful resistance." Lena tilted her head slightly, studying the ceiling lights like she was bored. "That convoy," she said calmly. "You left them." Rao's jaw tightened. "You are not here to question imperial decisions. You abandoned civilians," Lena continued. Her voice was steady, not loud, but it carried. "Kids, families, no shields. Raiders would have torn them apart. They were outside protected territory. They were breathing," Lena replied. Silence spread. Even the murmuring stopped. Rael gestured sharply. A large display flickered to life behind him. Combat footage appeared. Explosions. Smoke. A lone human figure moving through chaos. Lena. The recording showed her sprinting across open ground while plasma bolts tore the air apart. She slid behind wreckage, lifted a trapped alien child, and shielded the small body with her own as debris rained down. The footage skipped forward. She fought with broken equipment, improvised tools, bare hands. Every move was fast, precise, and impossible. Gasps echoed through the chamber. "She should have died," one voice whispered from above. Real silenced the crowd with a raised hand. "This," he said coldly, "is reckless aggression, Deathworld behavior. Humans throw themselves into danger without reason." Lena's lips curved slightly. "There was a reason," she said. "They needed help." Raoul stepped closer. "And now you will face the consequence of defying Imperial order." They locked magnetic restraints around Lena's wrists and ankles. The devices hummed softly, projecting a faint field meant to freeze muscle response. Most beings collapsed instantly when activated. Lena flexed her fingers. The field flickered. A technician on the side panel frowned and tapped controls. The hum grew louder. Lena rolled her shoulders like someone warming up for exercise. "That's new," she said quietly. The technician stared at the readings. "Commander, her vitals are stable." "They should not be," Rael snapped. Lena looked down at the restraints. She twisted her wrists slightly. Not enough to break free, just enough to feel the pressure. "You calibrated this wrong," she said. Raoul's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me? The frequency?" Lena continued. "It's tuned for your muscle density, not mine. Human nerves fire faster. You're locking the wrong rhythm." The technician froze. His display confirmed it. Rael felt irritation crawl up his spine. Adjusted. The air around Lena shimmered. She inhaled slowly, then exhaled, bared and still standing. The crowd stirred again, louder this time. Raoul stepped directly in front of her. "Why are you not on your knees?" Lena met his gaze. "Because I'm not done standing yet." He studied her face, searching for fear. He found none. Only focus, like she was solving a puzzle. "Do you understand," Raoul said carefully, "that you are about to die?" "Yes." "And you feel nothing?" She considered the question. "I feel tired," she admitted, nodding. "Hungry? A little sore, but scared?" She shrugged. "No." Raoul gestured sharply. The firing squad marched in formation, armor clanking in perfect rhythm. 8 soldiers lined up across the chamber. The rifles glowed faintly as they powered on. The air grew colder. Up in the technician bay, a young analyst named Pell stared at Lena's combat file scrolling across his screen. Survival statistics blinked red. Injury reports read like medical impossibilities. Multiple fractures, continued fighting. Severe burns, mission completed. Organ trauma stabilized without treatment. Pell swallowed. "That's not normal." Another technician leaned over. "It's human." Lena was watching the soldiers, eyes moving from barrel to stance to distance. Her lips moved slightly, counting. "She's calculating," Pell whispered. "What?" "She's measuring angles. Down on the floor, Lena shifted her weight. The restraints hummed louder, reacting to her muscles. Sweat formed at her temple, but her breathing stayed steady. She raised her voice just enough. "You're compensating for recoil wrong," she told the squad. Several soldiers hesitated. Raoul's patience snapped. "Fire on my command." The rifles lifted. The chamber held its breath. Lena smiled faintly. Raoul's arm dropped. The blast thundered across the room. Light swallowed the platform. Heat rippled outward. Smoke curled into the air, thick and choking. The crowd recoiled. Some turned away, unwilling to watch what should have been instant death. When the smoke cleared, a silhouette stood inside the fading glow. Lena coughed once, still upright. The restraints sparked violently, overloaded. She shook her wrists, and the devices fell apart in pieces. The squad stared, frozen. Raoul felt the world tilt. "How?" someone whispered. Lena brushed ash from her sleeve. A scorch mark stretched across her shoulder. Fabric melted. Beneath it, her skin was red but intact. She rolled the shoulder, testing movement. "See?" she said calmly. "Wrong angle." The chamber was silent except for the faint crackle of cooling metal. Raoul stepped forward slowly. "Why?" he demanded, voice tight. "Are you still here?" Lena met his eyes. "Because," she said, "you're not aiming to kill. You're aiming to prove a point." He stared at her. "And points," Lena added, "don't stop humans." The soldiers shifted uneasily. Some lowered their rifles without realizing it. Up in the technician bay, Pell's hands trembled over the controls. Every sensor confirmed the impossible truth. She had taken a direct hit and adapted in real time. "She planned it," Pell breathed. Raoul heard the murmurs spreading through the crowd. Fear was turning into something else. "That was dangerous." He forced his voice steady. "Reset the squad." No one moved. "Reset," he barked louder. The soldiers hesitated, then slowly reformed their line. Lena stretched her neck like an athlete between rounds. "You're going again?" she asked. Raoul glared. "Yes." She nodded once. "Then," Lena said, looking down the barrels, "can you aim faster?" The question hung in the air. Not a plea. A challenge. The chamber erupted in whispers. The firing squad stared at her, fingers trembling on triggers. They weren't looking at a prisoner anymore. They were looking at something they didn't understand. Something that refused to break. And for the first time since entering the hall, Commander Raoul felt uncertain. The human girl stood in the center of the execution platform, relaxed, waiting. Like this was just another test. And she intended to pass. Lena stood still as the firing squad adjusted their weapons. Her hair clung to her sweat-soaked forehead. The hall was silent, except for the hum of the power systems and the faint crackle of energy from the rifles. The crowd leaned forward, curiosity and fear mixing in their alien expressions. None of them had ever seen a human survive even a single blast like she had. Commander Raoul's voice was firm but strained. "Soldiers, fire!" A sharp roar filled the hall. Sparks jumped from the floor, and the air twisted with heat. Lena was thrown backward as the first wave of shots struck her, and the magnetic restraints absorbed most of the energy. Smoke and sparks filled the chamber. The crowd gasped. Some turned their heads in shock. When the smoke cleared, Lena was still standing. A faint scorch mark ran across her side, but she looked unhurt otherwise. She flexed her fingers and took a deep breath, as if she had been taking a stroll rather than facing death. The guards froze. Raoul stepped forward, disbelief and anger mingling in his eyes. "Impossible," he muttered. "That should have killed her." "She's still human," one soldier whispered. "She shouldn't survive that." Lena raised her voice. "Your timing is off. You fired too early. You weren't ready to hit the mark." The soldiers shuffled nervously. The squad had trained for years, but this human, she was different. She analyzed every movement, every hesitation, and she was using it against them. Raoul's hands clenched into fists. "Reset. Try again." The soldiers moved quickly to adjust their weapons. Lena observed silently, calculating angles and distance. Her mind raced faster than anyone in the hall could understand. A young technician, Pell, watched from the side. He had been monitoring Lena's body since her capture. Her muscles, her nervous system, her heart rate, everything was beyond human norms. His fingers hovered over the console, unsure if he should intervene. "She's not afraid," Pell whispered to a colleague. "She's controlling them." The second round began. Lena shifted slightly, rolling her shoulders, flexing her knees. She was ready. The rifles fired again. This time Lena used her agility to adjust the trajectory of the impact. She fell to her knees, then sprang back to standing, almost dancing around the shots. Sparks flew from the floor as the rifles overloaded, trying to compensate. The soldiers staggered back, struggling to keep their formation. The crowd was frozen in disbelief. "Commander," Pell shouted, she's adapting. Every shot you take, she reacts before it even hits." Silence. Lena looked up at him and smiled faintly. "You think more weapons will help?" He had seen humans survive, but not like this. Their biology was extreme, yes, but this girl was extraordinary. Every movement was precise, controlled, and fearless. The firing squad paused, checking their systems. Their rifles glowed faintly as they recalibrated. Lena stood calmly, arms loose at her sides, breathing steady. Her eyes scanned each soldier, predicting their next movement. "You're not trying to kill me," she said softly. "You're trying to prove control. That's your mistake. Control is necessary. Without order, there is chaos." "I don't care about your order," Lena replied. "I care about life." The third round began. Lena crouched low, sliding to one side. Energy blasts tore the floor where she had been standing. The hall shook with each discharge. She rolled across the metal floor, ducking under sparks and flying debris. She grabbed a fallen guard's rifle and deflected a shot away from her chest, spinning and tossing it back with perfect timing. The soldiers froze again. None of their training had prepared them for this. "Commander," one soldier said nervously, "she's not just surviving, she's manipulating the environment." Raoul's hands trembled slightly as he clenched them. "She cannot be allowed to live." Reset. Maximum force. Lena looked at him with calm eyes. "You want to try again? Go ahead." The rifles fired in unison. Lena's body moved with unnatural precision. She dodged and twisted, using the kinetic energy from the blasts to propel herself in ways no human should. Sparks and smoke surrounded her like a storm. Pell's eyes widened as he watched her movements. She's not just surviving. She's learning from every shot. Each blast makes her faster, stronger, more aware. The hall was chaos. The crowd backed away from the edge, whispering and pointing. Alien citizens who had never believed in humans began to reconsider. This girl had survived impossible odds not once, but repeatedly, with growing control over the battlefield. Raoul shouted for the guards to stop, but some soldiers hesitated. The hall echoed with the sound of firing, metal sparking, and gasps from the crowd. Lena danced through the attacks, calm and focused. She stopped suddenly in the center, facing the commander. "I'm done playing." The firing stopped. Smoke cleared. Lena's body was marked with minor burns and abrasions, but she stood tall. Her breathing was steady. Her eyes glowed faintly with determination. The crowd was silent. The soldiers were stunned. Raoul stepped forward, unsure of what to do next. "How?" he muttered. "Are you still alive?" "Because I survive," Lena said simply. "Humans survive. We adapt. You will never understand it because you are afraid of fear. Fear is a tool, not a weakness." Raoul studied her, frustration and admiration battling inside him. He had been taught to see humans as weak, reckless, and inferior. This girl shattered every assumption. "Teaching us," one soldier whispered. Lena's voice echoed through the hall. "I can survive because I choose to. I don't fight to die. I fight to live." The commander's mind raced. Every option he had prepared was useless. The firing squad was ineffective, the restraints failed, and the girl in front of him defied every rule of their empire. "Release her," Pell shouted from the side, unable to contain himself. "She's incredible." "You would betray your command? She's not a threat. She's human. She can save more than she can destroy," Pell said. Lena looked at Pell and nodded faintly. "You understand." Raoul shook his head. "This cannot continue. The Empire will not tolerate this. She must die." The crowd murmured. Conflicting emotions ran through them. Some admired her courage. Others feared the chaos she represented. Lena's gaze swept across the hall. She studied the soldiers, the commander, the crowd. Every movement, every expression, every twitch was recorded in her mind. She calculated, analyzed, and prepared for what would come next. "You want to try again?" she said softly, almost a challenge. Raoul's hand twitched toward his communicator. "Prepare the next round. Full power." Lena bent her knees slightly, ready for the incoming assault. Sparks flew as the weapons charged. Smoke curled through the air. Every eye in the hall was fixed on her. The next shots would decide everything. And Lena was ready. She had already won, in a way the Empire could not yet understand, because she did not fight to die. She fought to survive. And the survival of a human girl was more dangerous than any weapon the Empire had ever created. She waited calmly as the firing squad prepared again, her eyes calm, her body ready. The first shot of the next round roared through the hall. Lena twisted, rolled, and dodged, barely moving but avoiding every strike. Sparks danced around her. Smoke filled the chamber. Metal cracked beneath the energy, and the audience gasped. This time, Lena moved with purpose. Each dodge, each shift, each subtle motion taught the soldiers something they had never considered. Humans could learn in seconds what took them years. The hall was silent except for the hum of the weapons and Lena's steady breathing. Commander Real clenched his jaw. He had never faced someone like her. He had never faced anyone like a human. The crowd held their collective breath, watching the girl survive impossible odds, mocking death itself. Lena smiled faintly, her eyes glinting with quiet defiance. "Can you aim faster?" she asked again, her voice carrying over the hall. And the firing squad hesitated. Because this was no longer a game of weapons, it was a test of understanding, and Lena, the human girl, had already passed. Lena's eyes scanned the hall as the firing squad hesitated. Sparks and smoke still filled the air, and the metallic smell of burned energy clung to the walls. The crowd whispered, shocked and uncertain. No one had ever seen a human face death so many times and remain unbroken. The soldiers gripped their rifles, unsure how to proceed, and the commanders in the viewing chamber whispered among themselves, growing uneasy. Lena flexed her shoulders and knees, preparing for the next move. Her body was sore, bruised in a few places, but her mind was sharper than ever. Every shot, every blast, every jolt had taught her something new. She could predict the rifle's energy patterns, the timing of the triggers, the recoil. Every movement the squad made was part of a rhythm she now understood perfectly. Commander Raoul's voice boomed across the hall. "Focus. You will obey." The soldiers gritted their teeth. Some tried to adjust the weapon's angle, others steadied their hands, but the fear of the unknown held them back. Lena's calm confidence made their practice drills seem weak and predictable. Lena moved slightly forward, testing their reflexes. One soldier flinched, and she noted the exact moment his aim faltered. Another adjusted too late, and she marked the recoil pattern in her mind. She was not just surviving, she was learning, teaching herself how to exploit every weakness around her. "You rely too much on your machines," she said softly. "You forget the mind behind the weapon matters more." Raoul's face tightened. "Do not lecture me." "I'm not lecturing," Lena replied. "I'm showing you the truth. Humans do not fear what you call danger. We use it." Lena rolled to the left, the blasts missing her by inches. Sparks flew from the floor and walls, and some of the energy bolts ricocheted. She caught one glancing off her shoulder, twisted her body, and let it slide harmlessly across her back. The crowd gasped. Pell's eyes were wide behind the console. She's moving, like the energy itself is part of her body," he whispered to a colleague. "Every shot teaches her, and she adapts instantly." The hall seemed to shrink as Lena twisted and dodged. She reached down, grabbed a short metal rod that had fallen from one of the shattered restraints, and used it to block another shot. Sparks flew as the energy ricocheted off the rod, and she tossed it aside before landing on her feet again. Her breathing was calm, her movements precise, almost fluid. Raoul's jaw tightened. "Stop. Stop at once." Lena shook her head. "You can try, but stopping won't change what I am." The firing squad paused, confused. For the first time, some of the soldiers looked at her, not as a prisoner, but as a force they could not predict. She was teaching them without words, demonstrating that humans survived by instinct, strategy, and sheer will. One soldier, younger than the others, dropped his rifle slightly. Lena noticed immediately. She tilted her head, her gaze meeting his. "Afraid?" she asked quietly. He swallowed hard. I don't know what to do," he admitted. "Then learn," Lena said. "Adapt. Survive. That's what humans do." Raoul's face went pale. The hall had turned against him in subtle ways he could not command. The soldiers, seeing their own fear reflected in her calm, began to hesitate. Lena took a deep breath. "I am not your enemy unless you make me one." Another volley of shots came. Lena rolled to the side, grabbed a piece of fallen armor, and deflected a blast back toward the floor, creating a small shockwave that sent the nearest soldiers stumbling. Sparks rained down. A few fell to the ground, shielding their faces. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, some cheering quietly, some terrified. Pell's hands trembled over the controls. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Every calculation he had about human biology was being rewritten in front of his eyes. "She's impossible," he muttered. And she's right. She's showing them what humans really are. Raoul raised his hand, shaking with anger. Stop, enough of this. Some of them had been saved by Lena's own quick thinking. They had seen her shield civilians and even soldiers, including those who had tried to harm her. Fear of defying orders was strong, but their survival instincts combined with awe at her skill made them pause. You can continue if you want, she said calmly. I will not fight to die. I fight to live, and I will survive. The hall went silent. The tension was unbearable. The audience leaned forward in suspense. No one knew what would happen next. Lena's calm, confident demeanor contrasted sharply with the chaos around her. Sparks, smoke, and shattered metal littered the floor. Suddenly, an explosion rocked the outer walls of the hall. Dust and debris fell from the ceiling. Alarms blared. The crowd screamed in panic. Lena barely flinched. What's happening? Rael shouted, his voice cracking. Pel's fingers flew over the console. External attack. Unknown forces are breaching the fortress. Raoul's face turned white. The Empire's defenses were meant to be impenetrable. Yet the outer walls were under fire, and the invaders were moving fast. Release her! Pel shouted. She can help us. Raoul hesitated. Every instinct told him to follow protocol, to punish the prisoner. But seeing the invaders breach the defenses and watching Lena stand ready, calm, and prepared, something inside him shifted. He turned to the guards. Free her. The restraints disengaged with a soft hum. Lena flexed her wrists and ankles, feeling the sweet release. She didn't run. She didn't shout. She simply stood, ready for what was coming. The outer doors shattered. The invading force poured in. Heavily armored soldiers, strange energy weapons, and vehicles that moved faster than the defenders could react. The hall descended into chaos. Citizens screamed and ran for cover. The firing squad had no choice but to fight for their lives. Lena moved like a storm. She assessed the battlefield instantly, taking in the positions of allies, enemies, and civilians. She grabbed a fallen weapon, spinning it expertly as she deflected a blast aimed at a soldier who had hesitated moments before. Sparks flew, metal bent, and the crowd gasped again. She reached a wounded civilian, a small alien child, and scooped him up without hesitation. A blast hit nearby, throwing her to the side, but she rolled and landed on her feet, shielding the child from harm. She handed the child to a safe area and returned to the fray, moving faster than anyone could follow. Rael watched, stunned. His soldiers, once afraid of her, now fought alongside her, following her example. Even those who had wanted to execute her were now protecting her, inspired by her courage and skill. Pel's voice came over the communicator. Commander, she's showing us how to fight. Look at them. The soldiers are moving like she is guiding them. The alien attackers faltered as Lena used her environment to her advantage. Sparks, fallen metal, and energy fields became tools in her hands. She blocked one blast with a piece of debris, used the recoil to launch herself toward another attacker, and neutralized him without lethal force. Her movements were fluid, precise, and terrifying. Rael realized the truth. The Empire had underestimated humans. They had dismissed Lena as a fragile, reckless creature. But here she was, showing him and his soldiers that humans were not just strong. They were adaptable, clever, and fearless. The tide began to turn. The invaders, seeing the unexpected resistance, began to retreat. Lena didn't chase them immediately. She ensured civilians were safe and soldiers could regroup. Her focus was control, not chaos. When the last of the invaders fled, the hall was in ruins. Smoke rose from scorched metal and broken walls. Citizens peeked from hiding places, watching the human girl who had survived execution, defied the firing squad, and saved the fortress from destruction. Raoul approached her, his face pale. Why didn't you run? He asked, voice low. Lena looked at him calmly. Because there's no honor in running from what you can face. I fight to survive, yes, but I also fight to help. Even those who tried to kill me, even them. Raoul's hands clenched and unclenched. He had no words. He had never faced someone like her, someone who could change the hearts of soldiers and citizens alike by simply surviving and refusing to break. Pel watched her from the side, shaking his head in disbelief. She's showing us what humans really are. Not reckless. Not fragile. Stronger than we ever imagined. Lena turned to the crowd and raised her arms slightly, acknowledging the citizens. There was no arrogance in her gesture, only calm, quiet strength. The hall was silent for a long moment. Then murmurs began, rising into cheers, then shouts. Lena had survived, taught, and inspired. She had changed everyone in the chamber without firing a single shot. Raoul took a deep breath, realizing the Empire had underestimated not just her but the entire human race. And Lena, standing tall amidst the ruins, had shown that survival was only the beginning. The true strength of a human was courage, will, and the refusal to yield to fear. Outside the hall, alarms still blared. Reinforcements from the invaders could arrive at any moment, but Lena did not flinch. She was ready. She had survived impossible odds before, and she would survive again. Her calm eyes swept over the battlefield, and she whispered to herself, almost like a promise, "This is just the start." The fortress was in chaos. Smoke curled through broken windows, alarms blared, and the air smelled of scorched metal. Lena stood on the cracked floor of the main hall, her eyes scanning the perimeter. Soldiers scrambled, trying to contain the panic, and civilians hid behind shattered walls. Outside, reinforcements from the invaders were approaching faster than anyone had expected. Commander Rael approached her, still in disbelief. "We cannot hold them alone," he said, voice low. "We need your help." "Then let's move. I'll show you how." She ran forward, not hesitating. Her body moved with fluid precision, dodging falling debris and steering clear of unstable energy fields. Every step, every motion was calculated. She reached a barricade where a group of soldiers struggled to set up a defense. Without a word, she took a fallen energy rifle and adjusted the angle of their shields to cover the civilians behind them. Sparks flew as an incoming blast hit the barrier, but Lena had positioned them perfectly. The shields held. One young soldier, barely older than a child in human terms, stared at her in awe. How are you doing this?" he asked, breathless. "Pay attention," Lena said simply. "Learn. Adapt. Survive. That's all it takes." She sprinted across the hall, dodging another blast that tore through the floor near her. She slid under a fallen beam, grabbed a piece of scrap metal, and used it to deflect a rifle shot aimed at a wounded soldier. The deflection sent sparks into the air, illuminating her determined face. Pell watched from the control station, shouting updates into the comms. "Commander, she's teaching them. Everyone she touches starts moving more efficiently. She's coordinating the defense without even speaking." Raoul realized it was true. Soldiers who had hesitated before now followed Lena's lead instinctively. She moved from group to group, shielding, directing, and demonstrating how to use the environment to their advantage. Her presence inspired confidence. Outside, the invaders surged forward, their advanced shields clashing against the fortress defenses. Lena sprinted toward a group trapped behind a collapsed wall. She lifted debris effortlessly, creating a small corridor. Civilians rushed through. One elderly alien tripped, and Lena caught him with ease, placing him behind a barricade and giving him a reassuring nod. Another wave of invaders broke through a side entrance. Lena grabbed a pair of energy grenades, analyzing the best placement to slow their advance. She rolled them into position and detonated them at the perfect moment. The explosion was controlled, cutting off the attackers without harming anyone nearby. Soldiers who had been frozen with fear began to move, following her example. Raoul watched the human girl in amazement. Every move she made was precise, intentional, and inspiring. "I underestimated her," he admitted quietly. "She's changing everything." "She's showing us how humans survive," Pell replied. "Not reckless, not careless. Strategic. Brave. And deadly when necessary." Lena moved to the upper level, where more soldiers and civilians were trapped. She assessed the layout, calculating the timing of the invaders' next approach. Using ropes and beams, she created pathways and defensive positions. She instructed soldiers on where to stand, how to angle their shields, and when to fire. Each suggestion was followed immediately, and the defenders began to move as one unit instead of scattered, panicked individuals. The invaders paused at the base of the hall, confused by the sudden organized resistance. Lena seized the opportunity. She sprinted forward, disarming one invader with a swift twist and push, then redirected him into a group of allies waiting to subdue him safely. Another invader charged, energy rifle raised, and Lena sidestepped, using his momentum to throw him into a pile of crates. Raoul stepped forward, watching closely. "She's not just surviving," he muttered. "She's controlling the battlefield." "Exactly," Pell replied. "She's not a threat to us. She's our only advantage." The fortress shook as another group of invaders breached the outer defenses. Lena didn't hesitate. She dashed through a side corridor, signaling soldiers to cover key choke points. With a combination of hand signals, gestures, and direct actions, she orchestrated a defense that began turning the tide. Soldiers who had been terrified moments ago now moved with confidence. Civilians followed her guidance, avoiding danger zones and finding safe spots. A large energy blast hit the ceiling above Lena, sending debris raining down. She rolled forward, grabbed a heavy beam, and used it to block the path of an advancing invader. Sparks flew. Metal twisted. Lena didn't flinch. She threw the beam aside, her body ready for the next threat. Pell watched, fascinated. She's like a force of nature. She adapts instantly, and everyone around her responds. Ral knew Pell was right. The human girl who had faced the firing squad without fear was now saving the fortress from destruction. Every decision, every movement, every word she spoke changed the outcome of the battle. Lena reached the central hall, where a group of wounded civilians and soldiers were trapped behind a collapsed doorway. She analyzed the structure, noting weak points and safe angles. With a few swift moves, she lifted heavy debris and created a passage. Civilians rushed through, gasping for breath. She helped a young soldier to his feet and nodded at him. Stay calm. Move fast. You can survive this. Lena ran toward the front lines, dodging energy blasts and using debris for cover. She spotted a group of soldiers pinned down by enemy fire. Aperiaxity, she grabbed a fallen energy shield, angled it to deflect incoming shots, and led the soldiers forward. Sparks flew as the blasts ricocheted harmlessly away. Ral felt a surge of respect. I can't believe it, he whispered. She's doing what our forces could never do. She's human, Pell reminded him, and humans survive by refusing to yield. That's what she's teaching us. Lena reached the outer edge of the hall, where the invaders had broken through a side gate. She assessed the situation quickly, calculating angles, distances, and timing. With precise throws, she used energy grenades and debris to create barriers and redirect the invaders into traps set by the defenders. Every movement was calculated to minimize harm to her allies while maximizing disruption to the enemy. The invaders faltered, confused by the sudden organized defense. Soldiers who had been scattered and panicked were now moving with purpose. Civilians found safety. Lena moved like a shadow, her body swift and precise, each step reinforcing the morale of those around her. Rael watched, realizing the truth he had denied for so long. Humans were not reckless or fragile. They were adaptable, clever, and fearless. Lena had not only survived impossible odds, but she had also transformed the defenders into an effective fighting force. The tide of battle began to shift. The invaders, seeing their advantage slipping, began to retreat. Lena didn't pursue them immediately. She ensured that civilians were safe and soldiers could regroup. Her focus was control, not chaos. When the last invader fell back, the hall was in ruins. Smoke rose from scorched floors and broken walls. The defenders, soldiers and civilians alike, looked at Lena with awe. She had survived execution, defied the firing squad, and saved them all. Rael stepped forward, his face pale. "Why didn't you escape when you could?" he asked, voice low. Lena looked at him calmly. "Because there is no honor in running from what you can face. I fight to survive, yes. But I also fight to protect. Even those who tried to kill me. Even them." Creation. Rael's hands clenched. He had no words. Lena, the human girl, had done what no one in the Empire had thought possible. She had changed the hearts of soldiers and citizens alike by simply standing firm and refusing to break. Pell watched from the control station, shaking his head. "She's showing us what humans really are. Not reckless, not fragile, stronger than anyone imagined." Lena turned to the crowd and raised her arms slightly, acknowledging the citizens. There was no arrogance in her gesture, only calm, quiet strength. The fortress had been saved, but the battle was far from over. Reinforcements from the invaders could arrive at any moment. Lena didn't flinch. She was ready. She had survived impossible odds before, and she would survive again. Her calm eyes swept over the hall, and she whispered to herself, almost like a promise, "This is just the beginning." And the defenders, inspired by her courage, prepared to follow her lead. The Empire had underestimated not just a human girl, but the strength, adaptability, and courage of humanity itself. The fortress lay in ruins, smoke curling from shattered walls and scorched floors. Civilians huddled behind barricades, and soldiers moved cautiously, still shaken from the relentless attack. Lena stood at the center of the main hall, her chest rising and falling steadily. Her eyes scanned every corner, alert for any threat. The invaders had retreated, but their reinforcements would arrive soon. The Empire would not forget her defiance. Commander Rael approached her, his armor scuffed, face pale, and hands shaking slightly. "You've done the impossible," he said quietly. "You've saved lives, and the fortress. But the Empire will not forgive this." Lena nodded. "I know. I didn't come here to make friends. I came to survive, and I came to protect those who couldn't protect themselves." Raoul studied her. He had expected a desperate human, fearful and fragile. Instead, he saw calm, control, and confidence. He saw someone who inspired courage simply by standing tall. "They will send more," he said. "Stronger forces. You cannot hold them alone." "I won't be alone," Lena replied. "Look around you. Your soldiers are ready. Your civilians are learning. They survived because I showed them how. They can fight with purpose now." Raoul nodded slowly, understanding dawning. The Empire had underestimated humans. Not just her, but humanity itself. Their fear had blinded them to the truth. Lena was living proof that humans were not fragile, clever and unyielding. A comm alarm blared. Pel's voice came through the speakers, urgent and shaky. "Commander, the High Command is approaching. They're sending the execution squad again. They demand Lena's capture and immediate termination. They know what happened here, and they won't forgive it." Lena's eyes narrowed. "Then we prepare. Everyone ready?" The soldiers who had once hesitated now looked at her with trust and determination. They had seen her survive impossible odds, lead them and protect them. They would follow her. Raoul turned to the troops. "Defend the fortress. Do not fire until I give the order." "Follow her lead." Lena moved quickly, issuing instructions with gestures, quick commands, and precise demonstrations. She positioned shields, barricades, and energy traps. Civilians were moved to safe zones, while soldiers were placed where they could maximize defensive advantage. Every move was intentional, every action strategic. The High Command arrived in a fleet of sleek black ships. Energy beams tore through the sky as they prepared to land. Lena observed their pattern, timing her moves perfectly. She directed soldiers to take cover and prepare countermeasures. Raoul whispered, "This is madness." "They will destroy us if we fight smart," Lena replied. "Stay calm. Focus. Move fast. Adapt." The first wave of High Command forces descended. Soldiers fired energy rifles, but Lena had already predicted their trajectory. She rolled to the side, grabbing debris to block a blast and using it to redirect the energy harmlessly away from civilians. Sparks flew, lighting up her determined face. She moved toward a group of pinned-down soldiers. With a quick twist and a push, she disarmed one attacker and sent him into the path of another group of defenders who subdued him. Every action was precise, deliberate, and controlled. Pel shouted from the console, "Commander, she's doing it again!" "She's coordinating the defense perfectly. Everyone is moving with her guidance. I can't believe it. She's controlling the battlefield without speaking." Lena crouched behind a broken wall as another wave of attackers approached. She calculated angles, distances, and timing. With careful throws, she sent energy grenades into choke points, slowing the invaders' advance. Soldiers, inspired by her, followed her lead perfectly, creating a coordinated defense that baffled the attackers. An enemy leader advanced, wielding a heavy energy rifle. Lena assessed him quickly, noting his timing and rhythm. She dodged his first blast, rolled forward, and used his own momentum to throw him into a stack of crates. Orcs and energy arcs filled the air as metal collided with metal. The defenders began to push forward, gaining confidence with every move Lena made. Civilians, previously frozen with fear, now assisted by reinforcing barricades and moving supplies. The tide of battle was shifting. Raoul realized the truth he had denied for so long. Humans were not reckless. They were not fragile. They adapted, fought strategically, and inspired courage. Lena was not just surviving. She was changing the outcome of the battle entirely. The High Command forces faltered as their attacks were consistently countered. Lena moved through the chaos, her body fluid and precise, guiding the defenders and shielding those in danger. Her calm presence had become a symbol of hope. Pel's voice broke through the comms again. "Commander, they're retreating. They can't handle the humans' tactics." Raoul nodded slowly, awe in his eyes. "She's remarkable. Humanity is remarkable." Lena didn't celebrate. She continued to move, checking each area for threats, ensuring civilians were safe, and coordinating the defense. Sparks flew, energy shields cracked and reformed, but every movement she made was purposeful. Finally, the last of the High Command forces began to retreat. Defenders held their ground, battered but victorious. The hall was in ruins, smoke rising from scorched floors and shattered walls. Lena stood in the center, her chest rising steadily, her eyes calm and focused. The soldiers and civilians looked at her with awe and respect. She had survived execution, defied the firing squad, saved lives, and now led them to victory against overwhelming odds. Raoul approached, his face pale, but his eyes filled with understanding. "Why didn't you escape when you could?" he asked quietly. Lena met his gaze. Because running does not teach. Surviving does. Protecting does. Even those who tried to kill me, even them. The commander's hands clenched, then relaxed. He had no words. Lena, the human girl, had done what no one in the Empire had thought possible. She had survived, inspired, and led. Pell watched her, shaking his head in disbelief. She's showing us the truth about humans. Not reckless, not fragile. Stronger than we ever imagined. Lena turned to the survivors, both soldiers and civilians, and raised her arms slightly. There was no arrogance in her gesture, only quiet strength and calm confidence. The Empire would not forget what had happened here. They had underestimated humans, but Lena had proved that survival, courage, and adaptability were more powerful than any weapon. Outside the fortress, alarms still blared. Reinforcements could arrive at any moment. But Lena did not flinch. She was ready. She had faced impossible odds before and would face them again. Her eyes swept over the fortress and the survivors she had saved. She whispered to herself, almost like a promise, "This is only the beginning." The soldiers who had once hesitated now stood ready, inspired by her leadership. Civilians who had feared for their lives now moved with purpose and courage. Lena had done more than survive. She had transformed them all. The Empire had been challenged, not by weapons or numbers, but by the courage of one human girl. Her defiance, her strategy, her survival had changed everything. And Lena, standing tall amidst the ruins, had shown that humans were not to be underestimated. Their courage, their adaptability, and their unyielding will made them a force that could not be ignored. The Empire would return with greater strength, but Lena was ready. She had survived death. She had defied the firing squad, bleed and led an entire fortress to victory, and she would survive again. Her eyes glinted with quiet determination as she prepared for whatever would come next. The galaxy had seen the strength of humanity in one girl, and it would not forget. Because Lena, the Deathworld girl who faced the firing squad, had proved that courage, strategy, and determination could turn the tide against any empire, no matter how powerful. And the survivors she led would follow her anywhere, inspired by the human who refused to break, refused to yield, and refused to die. The Empire had underestimated humanity. Lena had reminded them why they should never do that again.